Modern India has a serious image problem, especially in the West. But what if I told you that the ancient Greek writers had something very different to say? Herodotus famously described India to be a land with an unbelievable landscape, wealth beyond imagination, and strange creatures such as gold-digging ants. Believe it or not, he actually thought that Indians paid their tax with the gold dust that these gold-digging ants fetched for them. I'm sure modern Indians would love to get their hands on these ants right now. A little after that, a spate of Greek writers wrote the Indica, one of the most detailed accounts of ancient India ever, and most of our points come from this document and some other chronicles from the era of Alexander the Great. So here are the list of the 5 things that the ancient Greeks said about India, and I'm pretty sure that number 5 will get me a lot of nasty comments from people who won't be able to accept it. Number 1. The Indians marry neither giving nor receiving dowry from one another. Dowry is a tradition which is regularly practiced in a lot of rural and small-town India, but according to the Greeks, the concept was rather alien to the Indians of the time. This perhaps comes as a huge surprise to many people nowadays who still view it as a norm deeply associated with the culture of India. But how did ancient Indians look? What were their talents? Here too the Greeks have something to say. Number 2. Like its animals, the humans of India are also exceptional in stature and bulk because of the abundance of crops. They are technically accomplished and skilled in the arts, as they breathe pure air and drink only the finest water. Pure air? Finest water? While this may seem hard to believe nowadays, remember that the ancients did not have to deal with the consequences of industrialization. On top of that, the soil of the Indian subcontinent, blessed by natural, mineral-rich water brought down from the Himalayas, nurtured not only a diverse range of flora and fauna, but also supported a thriving human population thanks to the fertile plains that it created all across North India. This is probably what the Greeks were alluding to here. Add to that the long and sophisticated literary tradition of India, which produced well-known epics such as the Ramayana and Mahabharata, as well as many philosophical texts such as the Bhagavad Gita. It definitely left quite an impression on the Greeks, which explains why this for the Indians is intellectually and artistically minded. Next is something that modern India still excels at. Number 3. The Indians have always been fond of singing and dancing. The story goes that while Alexander's army was rowing down the Indus on their way out of India, some native people, rather than attacking the retreating enemy, ran to the banks of the Indus River and started singing and dancing. The Greek general saw this and told his chronicler that the Indians have always been fond of dancing and singing. It's a scene straight out of a Bollywood movie. But this doesn't mean that Indians couldn't fight. In fact, the Greeks revered the high sense of morals upheld by Indian warriors. Number 4. The Indian warriors regard those engaged in agriculture and animal husbandry as sacred. Unlike warriors in other countries, they do not destroy farms or harm farm workers during wars. The warriors do not burn down the enemy lands with fire or cut down their trees. Sacred duty or dharma was a concept which once prevailed through Indian culture and life. A warrior's duty or dharma was to fight for his king, and a farmer's duty to till the land. So it was believed that if a soldier prevented the farmer from doing his sacred duty, then sin or adharma would have been committed. And so the Indians strictly followed their own set of ancient Geneva Conventions for thousands of years until the arrival of the Turks. That's when the system slowly started to disintegrate. But why? Well, because the Turks did not conform to these laws of war. Many crucial battles against the invading Turks were lost by the Indian kings, as they were under the false impression that the Turks also shared the same sense of morals which the Indian kings conformed to. As this new form of warfare entered India, the natives of India were forced to accept that all is fair in love and war. And now for the most mind-blowing fact, the one most likely to generate massive flame wars in my comment section. Number 5. A law prescribed by ancient Indian philosophers bans slavery. The law treats everyone equally, but allows property to be unevenly distributed. Hold on a second, this sounds familiar, doesn't it? This almost describes the system which still thrives in the modern West. Equality of opportunity mixed with an early form of capitalism. This is India 2,300 years ago. So wait, how can this be true? What about the class system? The Greeks actually described 7 professions which they saw in Indian society. This included philosophers, farmers, herders, artisans, military men, overseers, counselors, and assessors. Now, of course, there are several counter-arguments to this which suggest that the Varma Jati system did, in fact, affect many areas of life and that equality was reserved mainly for the so-called upper castes. But this is a complex topic and we need to explore this in a whole different video. So while we make that one, check out this video about India's greatest unopened treasure.